The memory of Livia's wedding is one I used to hold on to like a precious stone, smooth and perfect. She was radiant, bathed in the soft glow of a June afternoon, her laughter echoing in the small, flower-filled chapel. She looked at her new husband, Mark, with a kind of blind adoration that made my heart ache with a mixture of joy and apprehension. I was her older sister, the practical one, and even then I saw the tiny cracks in the foundation of their perfect day. Mark was charming, yes, but he had a way of making everything about him, of subtly dimming her light, so his could shine brighter. I pushed the thoughts away then, telling myself to let her have her moment. That memory feels like a lifetime ago. The radiant bride was gone, replaced by a woman I barely recognized. The call came late on a Tuesday. Livia's voice was thin, brittle. "He's leaving me," she said, without any preamble. Just those 4 words, and the world tilted on its axis. I was in my car before the call even ended, driving the 2 hours to the suburban house that she had once called her dream home. When she opened the door, she looked hollowed out. Her eyes were red-rimmed and puffy. Her hair was a tangled mess, and she was wearing a faded t-shirt of Mark's, a cruel irony that wasn't lost on me. The house was a disaster, a physical manifestation of her inner turmoil. Dishes were piled in the sink, laundry overflowed from baskets, and a half-empty bottle of wine stood sentinel on the coffee table. For the first few days, I just existed in her space. I cleaned the house, cooked meals she barely touched, and listened as she oscillated between heart-wrenching sobs and furious anger. She told me the story in fragmented pieces. Mark had been having an affair for over a year with a younger woman from his office. He hadn't even had the decency to be apologetic. He'd been clinical, cold. He told her the marriage had been a mistake for years, that he felt suffocated. Each word he'd spoken was a fresh wound, and she was bleeding out emotionally in front of me. I tried to be gentle. I knew she was in shock. Her pride in her future shattered in one swift, brutal conversation. "Livia," I started softly a week into my stay. "We need to think about the next steps. Have you spoken to a lawyer?" She flinched as if I'd struck her. "A lawyer? Jessica, I don't want a lawyer. I want my husband back. This is just a phase. He's confused." "He told you he's been with someone else for a year," I reminded her, trying to keep my voice even. "That's not confusion, Livia. That's a choice. He made his choice. Now you need to make yours and protect yourself." I had a friend from college who had become a formidable divorce attorney. I suggested we just call her for a consultation, no strings attached. I even offered to pay for it. Livia looked at me then, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of something other than pain in her eyes. It was a flash of resentment. "I don't need you to fix this, Jessica," she said, her voice sharp. "I know what I'm doing." But she didn't. Over the next couple of weeks, Mark would call her, feeding her just enough hope to keep her paralyzed. He'd say he missed her, that he was second-guessing his decision. Then he would vanish for days, not answering her frantic calls or texts. He was playing a cruel game, and she was letting him. Meanwhile, their joint bank account was being drained at an alarming rate, and a for sale sign appeared in the front yard of the house, a house she had poured her own inheritance into for the down payment. I tried to show her the bank statements, to point out the blatant financial abuse that was happening right under her nose. "Livia, he's taking everything. You have to freeze the accounts. You have to get legal advice." I felt a sense of urgency that she seemed completely incapable of sharing. I was watching a slow-motion car crash, and my sister was refusing to take her hands off the wheel. She was just sitting there, waiting for the impact. The breaking point came on a gray, drizzly afternoon. I had been going through the mail, a task Livia had been ignoring for weeks. Tucked between a credit card offer and a local supermarket flyer was a letter from a debt collection agency. It was addressed to both Mark and Livia, but the debt was for a sports car. A brand new, top-of-the-line sports car that I knew for a fact was not sitting in their garage. My blood ran cold. He hadn't just been draining their savings, he was actively accumulating debt in her name. He was building a new life with their shared money while she was here, waiting for him to come back. I walked into the living room, the letter trembling in my hand. Livia was on the sofa, scrolling listlessly through old photos of her and Mark on her phone, a gallery of a life that was now a lie. "Livia," I said, my voice tighter than I intended. "We need to talk. Now." She looked up, annoyed by the interruption. I held out the letter. "He bought a car, a luxury car. The bill is in both of your names." She took the letter, her eyes scanning the page. I watched her face, waiting for the dam to break, for the anger and realization to finally dawn. But it didn't. A strange sort of denial, so powerful it was almost a delusion, had taken root in her mind. She shook her head, handing the letter back to me. There must be a mistake. Mark wouldn't do that. A mistake? I could feel my own control slipping. Livia, open your eyes. He's robbing you blind. He's having an affair. He sold the house without your consent. He's drained your accounts, and now he's buying sports cars with his girlfriend while leaving you with the bill. What more do you need to see? My voice had risen, and the harshness of it echoed in the quiet room. Livia stood up, her face flushing with color. But it wasn't the color of shame or realization. It was rage. Pure, unadulterated rage. And it was all directed at me. Who do you think you are? She hissed, her body tense. You come into my house, acting like you own the place, telling me what to do, judging me. You've always done this, Jessica. Always acted like you knew better, like you were so much smarter than me. I was stunned into silence. Livia, that's not true. I'm just trying to help you. I'm scared for you. No, you're not scared for me, she snapped, taking a step closer, her finger jabbing the air between us. You're enjoying this. You never liked Mark. You've been waiting for this to happen since my wedding day. You want to see me fail, to prove you were right all along. That is a horrible thing to say, I whispered, the accusation landing like a physical blow. Is it? You think I can't see the smug look on your face every time you find another clue about what Mark has done? She was practically spitting the words now. The grief had been replaced by a venomous pride. You're not smarter than me, Jessica. You have your neat, perfect little life, and you think you can just waltz in here and run mine. Well, you can't. This is my marriage, my husband, and my problem. I don't need your help. I don't want it. The words hung in the air, sharp and glittering with malice. You're not smarter than me. It was a phrase designed to cut, and it did, deeper than she could ever know. It wasn't about intelligence. It was a rejection of my love, my concern, my very presence. In that moment, I saw with blinding clarity that I couldn't help her. Any attempt I made was just feeding her narrative of me as an overbearing, judgmental older sister. My help was not just being rejected, it was being twisted into a weapon against me. I looked at her, at this stranger standing in the wreckage of her life, and I felt a profound and weary sadness settle over me. I couldn't fight Mark, and I couldn't fight her. I had to let go. Okay, I said, my voice flat, devoid of the emotion that was churning inside me. You're right, it's your life. I'll be gone in an hour. I turned and walked upstairs to the guest room I had been staying in, my movements stiff and mechanical. I packed my bag, folding my clothes with a precision that belied the chaos in my heart. Each item was a reminder of my failed mission. As I walked out the front door, I didn't look back. There was nothing more to say. I had tried to help my sister after her divorce, but she snapped, "You're not smarter than me." So I let her lose everything alone. The drive home was a blur of rain and tears. The silence that followed my departure was, I imagine, a relief for Livia at first. She was free from my prying eyes, my incessant warnings, my "I told you so" attitude that she had so viciously invented. She could now handle the situation her way, which meant waiting for Mark to come to his senses. She clung to the hope he fed her in brief, sporadic phone calls. He'd tell her he was confused, that the grass wasn't greener, that he missed the life they had. He was a master puppeteer, and Livia was his willing marionette, dancing on the strings of her own desperation. She ignored the increasingly frequent calls from creditors. She ignored the formal-looking letters that piled up on the doormat, unopened. She told herself they were all mistakes, administrative errors that Mark would sort out once he came home. The for sale sign on the lawn became a source of fantasy. She imagined Mark taking it down, telling her it was all a big misunderstanding. She lived in a world of make-believe, a fragile bubble of denial that was about to be spectacularly burst. The first real puncture came when the real estate agent showed up with a family for a viewing. Livia was still in her pajamas at noon, and she was mortified, confused. She tried to tell the agent it was a mistake, but the woman just gave her a pitying look and continued the tour, pointing out the great bones of the house that Livia had once so lovingly decorated. Strangers were walking through her life, commenting on the color of the walls, assessing the space where her future was supposed to be. The humiliation was a sharp, cold slap in the face. The final fatal blow came a few weeks later. The house sold. Livia received a certified letter with an eviction date. It was real. It was happening. Panicked, she called Mark, her hands shaking so violently she could barely hold the phone. For the first time in months, he answered on the first ring. "Mark, thank God. You have to do something. They sold the house. We're being evicted," she cried, a torrent of frantic words. There was a pause on the other end of the line, and then Mark's voice, as calm and detached as a surgeon discussing an incision. I know, Livia. I sold it. The money has been transferred. Livia couldn't process the words. What? What do you mean the money? What about my money? My inheritance? What inheritance? He asked, and the feigned innocence in his tone was more chilling than any shout. That money was gifted to the marriage. It was ours. Now it's mine. I needed it to start my new life. In that one sentence, the entire artifice of her denial collapsed. The fog cleared, and she saw him for what he was. A thief, a liar, a man who had not just broken her heart, but had systematically and callously stolen her future. He had never been confused. He had been strategic. He had been playing her, using her love and her hope as tools to facilitate his grand escape. The phone slipped from her hand, clattering to the floor. The line went dead, but the silence that followed was filled with the deafening roar of the truth. She was homeless. She was broke. The credit cards were maxed out. The joint accounts were empty. The sports car, the fancy dinners, the weekend getaways with his lover, she had paid for all of it. Every last cent. The next few days were a blur of shame and despair. She had to pack up the remnants of her life into cardboard boxes, each object a testament to her foolishness. The wedding photos felt like a cruel joke. The furniture they had picked out together was a monument to a shared dream that had only ever been hers. She was forced to sell most of it for a fraction of its worth, just to have enough cash for a deposit on a tiny, grim apartment on the other side of town. It was in that empty, echoing house, surrounded by boxes and the ghosts of her mistakes, that she finally hit rock bottom. The full weight of her situation crashed down on her. The resentment she had felt for me was replaced by a tidal wave of self-loathing. My words, my warnings, came back to her not as accusations, but as the desperate pleas they had always been. You're not smarter than me. The memory of her own words made her sick with shame. She had pushed away the one person who had tried to save her from herself, and now she was utterly, terrifyingly alone. It was from that desolate apartment, smelling of stale paint and regret, that she finally called me. It had been 3 months since I had walked out her door. I answered on the second ring, my heart pounding in my chest. I had been waiting for this call, dreading it and hoping for it in equal measure. Her voice was barely a whisper, broken and raw. Jessica, she sobbed, and the sound was so filled with pain it was almost primal. You were right. You were right about everything. And I'm so, so sorry. I didn't say, I told you so. The thought, petty and triumphant, never even had a chance to form. It was incinerated by the sound of my sister's voice, a sound stripped bare of all its usual bravado, leaving only the raw, serrated edge of agony. The wall I had so carefully constructed around my own heart, a fortress of frustration and righteous anger, didn't just crumble. It was obliterated. I'm on my way, I said, my voice thick and unfamiliar, choked with the tears I refused to shed over the phone. The drive was a blur of rain-slicked streets and the hypnotic pulse of the windshield wipers. Each rhythmic swipe seemed to echo the single, hammering thought in my mind, Livia. Her apartment building was even more grim and anonymous than I had pictured, a concrete block that seemed to sag under the weight of its own neglect. When she opened the door to her third-floor walk-up, the reality of her situation hit me with the force of a physical blow. The room was a small, dark box, tasting of dust and despair. It was furnished with a lumpy, bare mattress on the floor, a stack of cardboard boxes serving as a makeshift table, and the pervasive chill of poverty. Livia herself looked smaller, diminished, as if she were being swallowed whole by the emptiness around her. Her clothes hung loosely on her frame, and dark, bruised-looking circles ringed her eyes. We just stood there for a long moment, the chasm of the last few months stretching between us, a silence thick with everything we hadn't said. The air crackled with her shame and my regret. Then a shudder racked her body, and she collapsed into my arms. It wasn't a hug. It was a surrender. Her body shook with convulsive, guttural sobs, the kind that come from a place so deep you fear they might break a person apart. I lost everything, she wept, her words muffled against my shoulder. Jessica, I lost everything. Not everything, I whispered, my own tears finally breaking free, hot against my cheeks as I held her tight. You still have me. We spent the rest of that day and deep into the night talking, huddled together under a thin blanket on that sad mattress. This time, there were no defenses, no prideful walls. She told me everything, the story pouring out of her in a torrent of pain and self-recrimination. She spoke of the day the eviction notice appeared on their door, a stark white flag of their surrender. She recounted the final, brutal phone call with Mark, his voice cold and distant as he informed her the money was gone, that he considered her inheritance a gift to the marriage, and that he was filing for divorce. He had left her with nothing but a mountain of shared debt and the shattered ruins of their life. She also spoke of the shame, the deep, gut-wrenching shame that had been a physical barrier, keeping her from picking up the phone. She kept repeating the words she had hurled at me in our last fight, turning them over and over like a penance. "You're not smarter than me," she whispered, her voice raw. I kept hearing myself say that. I was so stupid, Jess. So proud. I couldn't stand the thought of you being right. I hated that you saw through him when I couldn't. I turned you into the enemy because it was so much easier than facing the truth about Mark and about myself. I know, I said, stroking her hair. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry if I ever made you feel that way. I was scared for you, and I pushed too hard. I was arrogant, too. I should have been more patient. I should have just listened. In that cramped, cold little room, we found our way back to each other. We cried for the man she had thought she loved, for the future she had so confidently planned, and for the precious time we had wasted being angry. The old, ingrained hierarchy of our relationship, me as the sensible, cautious older sister, her as the sometimes reckless, vivacious younger one, dissolved into the shared space of our grief. We were just two women, two sisters, facing a crisis together, equals in our vulnerability. A few days later, we sat in the sleek, intimidatingly quiet downtown office of my lawyer friend, Sarah. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, glinting off the glass and chrome, a stark contrast to the gloom of Livia's apartment. Livia sat perched on the edge of a plush leather chair, looking terrified but resolute, clutching a folder of documents we had painstakingly assembled. Sarah, brilliant and compassionate but radiating a no-nonsense energy, didn't sugarcoat it. She reviewed the bank statements, the emails, the prenuptial agreement Livia had so blithely signed. "This is bad, Livia," Sarah said, her voice gentle but firm. "What Mark has done is a classic, calculated case of financial and emotional abuse. It's coercive control. We can absolutely fight him, but I need you to be prepared. This is going to be a long, ugly, and expensive battle. He's hidden the assets cleverly, moving them through various accounts. We'll have to subpoena bank records, file motions for discovery. It's a marathon, not a sprint." Livia's face, which had held a fragile hope, crumpled. "But my inheritance, can't we prove it was mine? It came from Mom and Dad. We can, and we will, argue that it was separate property," Sarah explained patiently. "But in this state, the moment you deposited it into a joint account and used it for shared expenses, the down payment, the renovations, the vacations, it became a commingled marital asset. His claim that it was a gift to the marriage is the legal argument he will use. It's not hopeless," she added, seeing Livia's despair. "But it's not a slam dunk either. He played a very calculated, very cruel game." The legal battle was as brutal as Sarah had predicted. It became the suffocating reality of the next year. Mark and his lawyers fought them at every turn, employing every delay tactic and filing every frivolous motion possible, a clear strategy to bleed Livia dry of resources she didn't have. I paid her legal fees, an investment not just in her case, but in her. There were days Livia wanted to give up. I'd find her sitting in the dark, staring at a wall, the thought of facing Mark in a deposition too much to bear. But she never did. Something profound had shifted in my sister. The helpless, betrayed victim was still there, but alongside her, a new woman was being forged in the fire of adversity. She got a job as a receptionist in a dental office, a humbling step down, but she performed it with a quiet dignity. She went to therapy. She learned how to budget, how to cook for one, how to stand on her own 2 feet for the first time in her adult life. I watched, my heart aching with a fierce pride as she painstakingly rebuilt herself, brick by brick. In the end, they settled out of court. Livia got back a fraction of her inheritance, not enough to undo the damage, not enough to erase the debt, but enough for a fresh start. It wasn't the resounding victory we had hoped for, but it was a victory nonetheless. She had faced her demon and had not just survived, she had emerged stronger. About a year after that first desperate phone call, I went to visit her at her new apartment. It was still small, but it was a world away from that first sad room. It was bright and clean, filled with thriving plants and colorful art she'd found at thrift stores. It felt like her. We were sitting on her comfortable second-hand sofa drinking coffee. She was telling me about a promotion she was up for at work, her eyes sparkling with a genuine confidence I hadn't seen in years. You know, she said, looking at me over the rim of her coffee cup, her expression thoughtful. For the longest time, I honestly believed that needing your help meant I was stupid, that it meant you were better than me, that you had won. I know, I said softly, my heart full. She reached out and squeezed my hand, her grip firm. It doesn't. It just means you love me. And I love you. Thank you, Jessica. For everything. For not giving up on me. Especially when I gave you every single reason to. I smiled, a real, unburdened smile. The memory of her wedding day was no longer a perfect, precious stone I kept locked away. It was something more complex, more real. It had flaws and deep cracks, but it was part of a larger, richer story, our story. A story of loss, of resilience, and of a sisterly love that had been tested to its absolute limit and had, against all odds, endured. We had lost a fortune, but we had found each other again, and that, I knew, was worth everything.